The Hound of the Baskervilles. Chapter 1. Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, who was usually very unobservant, was seated in his armchair, with his back to the door. When I entered, he lifted his head and looked at me with a gleam of curiosity in his eyes. "Watson, you are just in time for a little problem," he said, motioning for me to take a seat. "It is a most interesting case I have just been considering." I settled down, eager to hear what he had to say. "What is it, Holmes?" I asked. He leaned back, his fingers steepled together. "It concerns the late Sir Charles Baskerville, who died under most mysterious circumstances. I have received a visit from Dr. John Watson, his physician, and the case may have taken a turn for the supernatural." Chapter 2. The Curse of the Baskervilles. Holmes explained that Sir Charles had been found dead on his estate, Baskerville Hall, in Devonshire. The circumstances surrounding his death were shrouded in legend and local superstition. Villagers spoke of a curse that had plagued the Baskerville family for generations, a ghostly hound said to haunt the moors, bringing death to those who crossed its path. "It seems that Sir Charles was frightened to death, Watson," Holmes continued, his voice low. "There are reports of strange howling in the night, and some believe he saw the apparition before his demise." "Do you believe in such tales, Holmes?" I asked, intrigued yet skeptical. "I am a man of science, but I also believe that there is often a kernel of truth in folklore," Holmes replied, his eyes glinting with interest. "We must investigate further, and I intend to go to Baskerville Hall." Chapter 3. A Journey to the Moors. The following day, we set off for Devonshire, the landscape changing dramatically as we traveled. The lush green fields gave way to the dark, foreboding moors. As we arrived at Baskerville Hall, I could feel the weight of history pressing down upon us. We were greeted by Dr. John Watson, who recounted the events leading to Sir Charles's death. He had been in good spirits, discussing plans for the future. But then, just days before his death, he became withdrawn and fearful. Holmes nodded, absorbing the information. "Tell me about the last night Sir Charles was seen alive." Watson explained how Sir Charles had been out walking on the moor, presumably heading toward the yew alley where he was later found. He had received a letter that day, which he was anxious to discuss, he said. "Interesting," Holmes mused. "May we see this letter?" Chapter 4. The Letter and Its Secrets. After obtaining the letter, Holmes studied it closely. It appears to be written in a hurried hand, but the contents are unclear. There is no signature, only a warning against returning to Baskerville Hall. As we delved deeper into the mystery, Holmes interviewed the local villagers. Many spoke of the Hound, while others hinted at a family feud. One man, Mr. Jack Stapleton, claimed to have a deep interest in the Baskerville family's history. "Stapleton seems to know more than he lets on," Holmes noted. "I believe he may hold the key to unraveling this mystery." That night, we ventured out onto the moors, guided only by the light of the moon. Holmes wanted to investigate the area where Sir Charles had met his end. As we walked, the eerie silence was broken only by the rustle of the wind and the distant echo of howling. Chapter 5. The Ghostly Howl. Suddenly, we heard a mournful sound that sent chills down my spine. "What was that?" I gasped, my heart racing. Holmes listened intently. "The Hound," he murmured. "It appears our suspicions are correct. We must find the source." As we pressed on, the howl grew louder, echoing across the moors. Our lanterns flickered, casting shadows that danced eerily around us. We reached the yew alley where Sir Charles had been found, and Holmes began to examine the ground. "Here!" he exclaimed, pointing to a set of large paw prints in the mud. "These are no ordinary dog tracks." Chapter 6. Unmasking the Truth. The following day, Holmes devised a plan to lure the Hound out into the open. He ordered a large, suitable bait and set up a trap. Meanwhile, we learned more about the Baskerville family, including a distant relative, Sir Henry Baskerville, who had recently arrived from Canada to claim his inheritance. When we met Sir Henry, he was visibly troubled. "I have received threats since arriving here, and I fear for my life," he said. "I want to know the truth behind my uncle's death." Holmes assured him that they would uncover the mystery. That evening, as we set our trap, the tension in the air was palpable. "Tonight, we shall confront the truth," Holmes declared, watching the darkness envelop the moors. Chapter 7. The Hound Revealed. As the night wore on, we waited in silence, hidden behind a rocky outcrop. Suddenly, a terrifying sound pierced the air, a growl, deep and guttural. Holmes sprang into action. "There it is!" he shouted, rushing toward the source of the sound. We emerged to find the Hound, a massive creature, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It lunged toward us, but Holmes was quick, using a signal to draw its attention away. The Hound, startled, paused. In that moment, we saw it was not a supernatural beast but a large dog trained to instill fear. "It's been painted to appear ghostly," Holmes shouted, realizing the deception. The creature had been used by none other than Jack Stapleton, who had sought to scare Sir Charles to death to inherit the Baskerville fortune. Chapter 8, The Final Confrontation. Holmes confronted Stapleton, who had been lurking nearby, waiting for the chaos to unfold. "Your scheme has been uncovered, Stapleton. You thought you could scare your way into wealth, but it ends here." Stapleton attempted to flee, but he was apprehended. "You will pay for this." He spat, his bravado fading. With Stapleton captured, we returned to Baskerville Hall, where Sir Henry was relieved to hear the truth. "I cannot believe I was nearly a victim of such a plot," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. Holmes explained how the Hound was a mere facade, created to hide Stapleton's true intentions. "Fear can be a powerful weapon," he mused. "But the truth has a way of revealing itself in the end." Chapter 9, Reflections on the Case. As we returned to London, I reflected on the events that had transpired. "Holmes, this case was extraordinary," I remarked. "The blend of legend and reality was captivating." Holmes smiled, leaning back in his seat. "Indeed, Watson. It serves as a reminder that we must not let our imaginations run wild without considering the facts. The truth is often more fascinating than fiction." And with that, we settled into our journey home, ready for the next adventure that awaited us.